Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jeff. This is my cave of cool books. It's a hot cave of cool books right now because it's a freaking 100 degrees Fahrenheit here with full humidity in Osaka, Japan. Today I want to do a shelf tour of what I've accumulated so far in the English translations of Seishi Yokomizo's creepy, weird, eerie, traditional, kind of locked room murder mysteries. Seishi Yokomizo is, a very famous mystery writer in Japan. He passed away quite a while ago, but he's had several films based off of his works. And in recent years, Pushkin Vertigo in the UK, a small independent publisher, has been putting several different Japanese honkaku type of murder mysteries out, but particularly they've been focusing on once a year releasing a novel, or in one case, two novellas together in one collection of Seishi Yokomizo's work. All of the books that Pushkin Vertigo have released so far have been part of the Kosuke Kindaichi, Detective Kosuke Kindaichi series of 77 stories. 51 of those are short stories or novellas, and 26 are novels. I only have 7 novels, like I mentioned earlier, that Pushkin Vertigo has put out one collection of 2 novellas, The Murder at the Black Cat Cafe. That one came out, I believe, last year, 2025. I have all the releases up through this year. Other than that one, I have the 7 novels that they've released. They kind of went more or less in earlier order, but then kind of skipped a bit more around. Maybe they're picking or cherry picking some ones that they think will be the most appealing to audiences. Here's the first one, the Honjin Murders. I've talked about the Honjin Murders and the Inugami Curse in my some earlier videos that I've done on this channel not so long ago. And each one of these has, not only a nice kind of title page, but they have a little information about Mr. Yokomizo himself. Now, I know that he had tuberculosis and he was struggling during the war here in Japan. He joked to his friends because he couldn't get penicillin or other antibiotics easily during that time. He joked whether he was going to die from his TB or from starvation first. It was in pretty bad shape. But he started to, after the war ended, he started to get really well-known and famous for his works. He's called the Japanese John Dickson Carr, who he greatly admired. He talks about him, name-checks him in this first book, The Honjin Murders. Obviously, he's a big fan of John Dickson Carr's impossible crime, locked room murder mystery sort of plots. And all of his books that I've checked out so far have some kind of weird, eerie, spooky sort of atmosphere or vibe. They're usually set in kind of remote locations and involve old, moneyed families and some long-buried secrets. Anyway, let me read you a little bit about Mr. Yokomizo that they mention in the author bio inside here. Recently, I've gotten new contact lenses, which have greatly increased my middle distance and long distance vision. That's a good thing, but unfortunately, my closer up vision is not good anymore. So to read the backs of books or blurbs or things, I need some reading glasses. So pardon moi as I don these to read this little bio about Mr. Yokomizo. So Seishi Yokomizo was born in 1902 and passed away in 1981. He was one of Japan's most famous and best loved mystery writers. He was born in Kobe and spent his childhood reading detective stories. No surprise when you read these novels and stories, before beginning to write stories of his own. The first of which was published in 1921, so right in the golden age of detective fiction, the 20s and the 30s, as talked about with Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, and other writers of note at that time. He went on to become an extremely prolific and popular author, best known for his Kosuke Kindaichi series, which ran to 77 books, many of which were adapted for stage and television in Japan. The Honjin Murders is the first Kosuke Kindaichi story and regarded as one of Japan's great mystery novels. It won the first Mystery Writers of Japan Award in 1948, but has never been translated into English until now. That is until 2019 by Pushkin Vertigo. The Inugami Curse, The Village of Eight Graves, Death on Gokumon Island, and The Devil's Flute Murders are also available from Pushkin Vertigo. Some of these have different translators. They all turn out really well from what I've read so far. Again, I've only read fully the Honjin Murders and the Inugami Curse. The Honjin Murders is the very first one, introduces Kosuke Kindaichi, who is a private detective. He's more in the Sherlock Holmes vein, I guess, than, of course, the usual hard-boiled, 45 packing fedora wearing detective of fiction like Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe or whatever. But he does get paid for his services, or at least he seems to be contracted to do so. I believe in the Inugami Curse, he's paid by the family law firm to sort that mystery out. I think he does this first book, The Honjin Murders, he does his investigation as a favor to a kind of mentor, kind of a patron of his, whose niece is murdered in some grisly fashion in that first book. And but he has a good relationship with the police. They usually let him walk all over the crime scene and work with them, because he often is called in to assist the police with his little gray cells. How realistic that would be, or indeed how realistic some of the far-fetched murder methods might be that are involved here, who's to say? Probably not very, but they're all very highly enjoyable mysteries, and you just have to roll with it, I think, if you like that kind of golden age mystery, tricksy plot, kind of locked room, impossible crime sort of story. I've talked about in the, I believe my June reading wrap-up, I talked about the plot of the Honjin Murders, but I'll just read the back of it real quick. In the winter of 1937, the village of Okamura is abuzz with excitement over the forthcoming Ichiyanagi wedding. But amid the gossip, there is also a worrying rumor. It seems a sinister masked man has been asking questions around the village. Then, on the night of the wedding, the Ichiyanagi household are woken by a terrible scream, followed by the sound of eerie music. Death has come to Okamura, leaving no trace but a bloody samurai sword thrust into the pristine snow outside the house. Soon, amateur detective, now here it says amateur detective, but he's a private detective, or that's what he's called in other novels. Anyway, amateur detective Kosuke Kindaichi is on the scene to investigate what will become a legendary murder case. But can the scruffy sleuth solve a seemingly impossible crime? See, that's me reading with my no reading glasses, just my contacts, so I have to kind of hold it a little bit away, and I'm not quite sure of every word there. It takes me a little while to decipher, especially when you have kind of small white print on a red background. Not so easy to read. So yeah, like they mentioned there, Kosuke Kindaichi is very young in this one. Kosuke Kindaichi is maybe a little bit out of college. He's had his private detective agency open for a while. He's had several cases under his belt, enough to gain some notoriety with the police, where he can show a card, a kind of introduction from the Tokyo police or the Osaka police to the the detective investigating this case, and immediately get access to the case and the suspects, and to question people, etc. And he wraps this one up pretty fast. Kindaichi is a scruffy, like it said, kind of scruffily dressed, seeming, when he's thinking hard, he's scrubbing his hair, or, kind of digging his fingers in his hair in a rather distracting fashion. But he's the typical genius sleuth of fiction. Very fun. Now, the second novel, this one, the first one, the Honjin Murder Case, was published in 1946, so right after World War II ended, which was, of course, had severe repercussions for Japan and Japan's economy. It eventually built up to be a economic powerhouse in the 60s and 70s, but at this time it must have been a pretty rough place to live, recovering from a couple of atomic bombings and other battles and destruction, and the kind of the specter of war haunts these earlier books in the series for sure. Now, the next one that came out in 1947, the next year, is Death at Gokuman Island. Now you'll see this kind of very striking design with the circular motif on the cover, the same sort of font all of the books have, including some running blood with the red font of the novel title on there, and of course the Seishi Yokomizo's name in the same font. This one has a woman's body draped over this circular pattern. Pretty cool. A classic Japanese murder mystery from the author of The Honjin Murders. Again, you see the Pushkin Vertigo logo there. Now, this one is with a yellow background. Let's see if I can read a little bit more easily. Black on yellow, maybe. The rock-bound and forbidding Gokuman Island was once a pirate stronghold. Now it is home to a clannish fishing community dominated by two feuding families. So again, like I mentioned earlier, powerful local families are always seem to be involved in these cases. When Kosuke Kindaichi arrives, bringing news of a death, it triggers a series of grotesquely staged murders. The scruffy detective attempts to untangle the island's secrets and stop the killings, but a fresh mystery seems to greet him at every turn, and soon he falls under suspicion himself. The fiendish Death on Gokuman Island is one of the best-loved classic murder mysteries by the master of Japanese crime. So this one sounds really cool. I haven't read that one yet. And again, you'll notice some of these are quite thick. This one's 314 pages, but again, they're pretty easy reading. They're nicely translated. This one is translated by a different translator, I believe. No, it's the same one, Louise Neal Kawai. She does a very nice job translating. The next one, which is the last one that's been released, this came out in 2026, and this is She Walks at Night. And again, you have that white circle motif, in this case with a woman walking with a katana, with a sword, up to no good, probably. And She Walks at Night was released, originally published in 1948. And this one has an interesting plot. And again, you'll see slightly different color scheme. Red and kind of gold, and now kind of robin's egg blue. Fear looms over the luxurious Furugami estate. Sorry, guys, this is just too much hard to read. The beautiful young Yachio Furugami, plagued by episodes of sleepwalking, receives a series of cryptic letters culminating in an ominous warning: walk not at night. Then a body is discovered decapitated with the centuries-old samurai sword. The police are baffled, so the famous sleuth Kosuke Kindaichi is called upon to solve the mystery, but before he can do so, the killer strikes again. Can Kindaichi get to the truth before the Furugami family is destroyed by its own secrets? And again, we got a well-known wealthy family, old family with some buried secrets that are the root of the murder mystery and the series of eerie crimes. In this case, we got a sleepwalking woman, maybe carrying a sword, and we have some beheaded corpses, so that should be pretty cool. Again, that was the third book, the third novel. There, in between these novels, Yokomizo was publishing several stories or novellas, but 26 of the 77 stories featuring Kosuke Kindaichi are novels, and the third novel was She Walks at Night. The fourth novel is this one, The Village of Eight Graves. And I believe David at Garage Geek is reading this one as we speak, so maybe he and I, if I get to this one in enough time, he and I will do a little joint buddy read review about it. Again, we have maybe a little less creepy, but still interesting cover. Someone dropping some poison, I'm assuming kind of poison dust into a boiling urn or something. This one is about a series of poisonings. The Village of Eight Graves was published in 1949, and She Walks by Night 1948. So again, every year or so, Yokomizo was releasing these. And again, we got a green motif on this one, so let's see if I can read it a little bit more easily. Nestled deep in the mountains of Japan, the hamlet of Eight Graves takes its name from a centuries-old massacre. Ever since that bloody day, people say, a terrible curse has hung over the village. When young Tatsuya arrives from the city to claim a mysterious inheritance, death follows close behind. After a series of gruesome poisonings, the villagers' suspicion quickly falls on the newcomer. With the help of the famous Kosuke Kindaichi, Tatsuya must race to uncover the murderer and save his own life before the inhabitants of Eight Graves take justice into their own hands. The Village of Eight Graves is an eerie classic murder mystery from the author of the Honjin Murders. So this one seems to be narrated mostly by this Tatsuya guy, the newcomer to this village. Quite often it's a third-person omniscient, and it's often, from the ones I've read anyway, quite a chatty, friendly, almost intrusive narrator at times, kind of saying, oh, if only Kosuke Kindaichi had met with this person or had got this piece of information, he would have solved the case earlier. But this one seems to be from the point of view of this newcomer Tatsuya. So that one looks pretty interesting, although poisonings, as nasty as they would be in real life, aren't quite as interesting as decapitations or mysterious deaths by samurai sword, or someone's body being stuck face down in an icy lake with its legs sticking up or something like that, like in The Inugami Curse, which was the first book I read in this series, and it's actually the fifth novel published in 1950. But again, the events of World War II still loom large. Many of the murder suspects and, in fact, murder victims all served, males all served in World War II in either China or other theaters in the war. Anyway, this one was a lot of fun, very interesting. I read it in a weekend. It was that gripping for me. It's, again, another 314 pages or so of a murder mystery. And this one is quite interesting. Again, I'll just read again, we have the aforementioned body with its legs sticking up out of the frozen lake. This one's set in a kind of remote mountain lakeside area and takes place over 6 weeks, 2 months or something. So it takes Kosuke Kindaichi quite a while to uncover this one. The Honjin Murders he solves in 2 days, but this one takes quite a bit longer. And it's not really any more twisty, I guess, but there's some other factors involved that make it more difficult for Kosuke to solve it. In 1940s Japan, the wealthy head of the Inugami clan dies, and his family eagerly waits the reading of the will. Inugami basically means dog god when it's directly translated. But no sooner are its strange details, the will's strange details, revealed than a series of bizarre, gruesome murders begins. Detective Kindaichi must unravel the clan's terrible secrets of forbidden liaisons, monstrous cruelty, and hidden identities to find the murderer and lift the curse wreaking its bloody vengeance on the Inugamis. The Inugami Curse is a fiendish, intricately plotted classic mystery from a giant of Japanese crime writing, starring the legendary detective Kosuke Kindaichi. And all of that is true. Very interesting book. Enjoyed that a lot. So I have 2 more. Again, there are many more novels. I only have 7 out of the 26, but these are the only things that have been translated into English other than The Mystery at the Black Cafe, which I will order soon. These take quite a while, usually about 3 weeks, because Pushkin Vertigo is a British publisher and they have to ship them overseas to Japan, and that usually takes quite a while. But they have arrived in good condition, which is good. There's another novel in between the Inugami Curse and this one. The Inugami Curse was published in 1950. This was published in 1951. So I guess the earlier one was also published in 1950 or 51. But this one is The Devil's Flute Murders, and a strange green hand throwing some kind of gas-emitting bottle. I'm not quite sure what the meaning of that is since I haven't read this book yet. Try not to get any glare on there. And again, I even though the illustrations are kind of basic in most cases, I really like this livery. I like the font of the name and the either black, red, or brown kind of font color, and the dripping blood motif there. I like the livery of these. They're nicely put together, trade paperbacks. So this one, again, published in 1951. The plot of this one is going to be harder to read. Oof. Some of these, depending on the color background, makes it harder for me to see. So pardon me as I don these again. An ingenious and highly atmospheric classic whodunit from Japan's master of crime. Amid the rubble of post-war Tokyo, inside the grand Tsubaki house, a once noble family is in mourning. The old Viscount Tsubaki, a brooding, troubled composer, has been found dead. When the family gather for a divination to shed light on their patriarch's demise, death visits the house once again, and the brilliant Kosuke Kindaichi is called in to investigate. But before he can get to the truth, Kindaichi must uncover all the Tsubaki's most disturbing secrets while the gruesome murders continue. So, as is the case with a lot of these murder mysteries, the detective is working hard, but still the bodies keep piling up. So that sometimes happens. The detective is beavering away, trying to solve the case, and bodies keep piling up, and after a ton of people die, finally the murderer can be unveiled. I'm not sure if that's how it'll go here, but it sounds like it. The one that I really want to check out, sounds really intriguing, is The Little Sparrow Murders. Now this one is the 16th novel out of 26. So Pushkin Vertigo kind of jumped forward to publish this one. And again, we got kind of an interesting shrouded female body there in the circle. The usual livery, we come back to kind of a sky blue motif again, or slightly more aquamarine maybe. This one was published in 1957. So, going from number 7 to number 16, that means basically 9 or 8 novels were published in that 6-year gap. So again, Yokomizo was really going to town putting these out, and again, they're not super thin, right? This one's 318 pages, so it's pretty lengthy novels that this Yokomizo guy was kicking out, punching out, hitting the typewriter keys really hard, and dashing them out just like a pulp writer of old in the States, trying to get some good light here. Kosuke Kindaichi comes to remote again. Of course, it's remote. It's always remote. Oniko Bay, expecting a peaceful mountain retreat, but he finds death stalking him at every turn. No sooner has the famous sleuth learned of a decades-old murder haunting the village than a new series of killings strikes the community. This time, the victims' bodies are eerily arranged to allude to the lyrics of a children's song. As the scruffy sleuth, they always like to call him Scruffy, as the scruffy sleuth investigates, the murders continue, with a sinister, stooped old woman appearing before every new death. Kindaichi must unravel a tangled tale of broken hearts and blackmail to get to the truth. The diabolically twisted plotting is top-notch, New York Times. So, I believe Chadwick from Chadwick's Channel of Stuff just picked this one up, and it does sound really cool. Again, I love even though it might be ultimately revealed to be, just human ingenuity of crime behind these murders, there's quite often an odd atmosphere, eerie, unsettling, strange sounds or songs or weird visions happening before the murders happen or the murderer strikes. It adds a nice kind of veneer of supernatural kind of spookiness to the proceedings. So that's quite cool. Anyway, that does it for my shelf tour of what I have so far, and I have pretty much everything that has been translated into English so far. Thanks again to Pushkin Vertigo in the UK for publishing these books with excellent translations and putting them out once a year. If they're going to continue at the pace of one a year, we're going to be here for a while, but that's okay. One a year works for me, and probably will be better for my pocketbook because it cost me a little bit to get these assembled within a month's period of time or so. I hope you might be, moved enough or interested enough to check out some of these for yourself. I think they're pretty interesting. I think people who might like this kind of weird, dark, gothic-tinged murder mystery would enjoy the Kosuke Kindaichi murder mystery series. And, if you've read any of these or have any experience with these, please leave me a comment below letting me know. And I hope everyone's doing well, staying cool wherever you are, and I will talk to you in the next video. Thanks a bunch.